The cold hit like a warning the moment Galvin stepped out of the subway, a sharp winter bite that sliced straight through his jacket as if urging him to run. And he did run, because somewhere across the glittering Christmas Eve streets of New York, Magnus was slipping away from him in ways that terrified him more than any storm ever could. Galvin had never feared snow before, but tonight the snow told stories. It fell thick, heavy, relentless, just like the silence that had settled between them after their last argument 2 hours ago, the kind of silence that does damage. He forced his breath steady, scanning the crowded streets flooded with holiday lights, carols, and hurried footsteps. Everyone else was rushing toward warmth, laughter, families, people they loved. Galvin was running toward the only person who had ever made him believe that love could be a home of its own. And he was losing him. Magnus. The thought curled like ice inside his chest. Galvin pushed past a couple carrying shopping bags, almost slipping on the sidewalk, almost cursing at the sky. But he kept moving because Magnus never let his phone die. Never. Not unless something was wrong. He replayed their last words, wishing he could take them back. Magnus had stood in the doorway of their tiny apartment, hands shaking despite the calm voice he tried to use whenever he pretended nothing hurt him. You don't have to keep saving me. I am not your Project Galvin. And Galvin, exhausted from a 10-hour shift and terrified that Magnus was spiraling again, had snapped before thinking. Then stop running from everything every time it gets hard. Stop running from me. Magnus had gone still, eyes darkening in ways Galvin hated more than any fight. I am not running. I am trying to protect you from myself. Before Galvin could answer, Magnus was already grabbing his coat, already leaving, already slipping out into the night as if distance would keep Galvin safe from the mess he believed he was. Galvin had shouted after him. But love wasn't always loud enough. Now the streets buzzed with Christmas cheer while Galvin searched for the person he loved most in a city big enough to swallow people whole. He crossed onto 42nd Street. Snowflakes stung his cheeks as he scanned faces, searching for blonde hair, tall shoulders, the familiar coat Magnus wore even after its zipper broke. Nothing. Magnus could get lost in a crowd even when he wasn't trying to. He moved like someone who never felt entitled to take up space. Someone who had learned too young to disappear. But Galvin saw him. He always did. He hurried toward Bryant Park, where the ice rink glimmered under strings of lights. For a moment he let himself breathe. Magnus loved this place. He liked watching strangers skate, even though he couldn't skate himself without falling dramatically on his ass. He said the sight of people gliding so effortlessly made him believe in softness, in things that moved without breaking. Galvin stepped into the crowd, scanning faces. Then he saw him. Magnus stood alone near the railing, snow dusting his hair like the universe had decided to crown him with winter itself. He was hugging his arms to his chest, staring at the rink like the noise of laughter and holiday music couldn't reach him. Galvin felt his heart drop painfully, because Magnus looked like he's been standing on the edge of something dark and deep, fighting with every breath not to fall. Galvin moved toward him, step slow, voice soft. Magnus. Magnus stiffened, recognizing the voice instantly. He didn't turn, didn't move. Galvin tried again, closer this time. Hey, talk to me, please. Magnus finally looked at him, and the moment their eyes met, Galvin felt the storm of emotions beneath the surface. Magnus whispered, you should be with your family tonight, not chasing after someone who keeps disappointing you. Galvin almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd how deeply Magnus misunderstood his own worth. I am chasing after the man I love, he said simply. Magnus swallowed hard. Don't say things like that when you're angry. I am not angry. I am scared, Galvin admitted. I am scared of losing you. I'm scared of you disappearing into yourself again. I can't lose you, not tonight. Not any night. Magnus looked away, breath catching. You deserve someone who isn't broken. And you deserve someone who doesn't let you stand here freezing and alone on Christmas Eve thinking you're unlovable, Galvin said. But here we are. So maybe we both need to stop believing the worst about ourselves. Magnus let out a sound half-laugh, half-sob. Galvin stepped closer until their breaths mingled in the cold. Talk to me, he begged. Tell me what's happening in your head. Let me carry some of it with you. We're supposed to be a team, right? Magnus finally let the walls drop, even if just a crack. I keep thinking you'll wake up one day and realize I'm not enough for you. And I don't know how to live with that fear. Every time we fight, every time I mess up, that voice comes back and it tells me you'd be happier without me. And I hate that I listen to it. Galvin's heart tightened. Gently, he reached for Magnus' hands, cold and trembling. Every day I choose you. Every day I want you. Not the perfect version of you. Not the fearless version. You. The Magnus who overthinks everything. The Magnus who cries at sad commercials. The Magnus who gets anxious calling the dentist. The Magnus who makes the best pancakes in the world. The Magnus who loves so fiercely he doesn't even realize it. Magnus' eyes filled with tears. I don't know how not to be scared, he whispered. Then be scared with me. We don't have to be fearless. We just have to be here. Together. Magnus' breath trembled as if the truth cut through him so sharply it hurt. Galvin squeezed his hands. I didn't fall in love with someone perfect. I fell in love with you. And I'm not letting you walk away from us. Not tonight. Not ever. Even if we have to fight for us 1,000 times. The words cracked something open. Magnus stepped forward and pressed his forehead against Galvin's. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry I keep breaking things. I just don't know how to stop being afraid that I'll ruin everything good in my life. And you're the best thing in it. Galvin cupped his face gently. You're not ruining anything. You're learning. We both are. And love isn't fragile, Magnus. We're allowed to fall apart sometimes. Doesn't mean we're broken. For the first time that night, Magnus breathed without shaking. Snow swirled around them like confetti thrown by the sky, the city glowing behind them, strangers skating in joyful circles. And for a moment the world softened. Galvin brushed a thumb over Magnus' cheek. Come home with me. We don't have to fix everything tonight, but we can face it together. One step, one breath, one Christmas at a time. Magnus nodded slowly, something like hope flickering in his eyes. Okay, take me home. But just as Galvin exhaled in relief, Magnus tensed again. His eyes flicked toward the edge of the park, expression shifting from soft to alarmed. Galvin turned to follow his gaze. A man was stumbling near the street, slipping on the icy curb, his shopping bags scattered, one rolling dangerously close to the passing traffic. Magnus reacted instantly. Without thinking, without hesitation, he ran. Galvin's heart lurched. Magnus, wait. But Magnus was already sprinting toward the man to pull him back from the street edge before he fell into oncoming cars. And in that split second Galvin saw something that made his blood freeze. A taxi was skidding on the ice, and Magnus didn't see it. Galvin's voice tore out of him. Magnus, the world spun into chaos. And everything began to fall apart again. Galvin didn't think. He didn't breathe. His legs were moving before the thought even formed, boots slipping on the icy pavement as he lunged toward the street. Magnus was still focused on the man he was helping, steadying him, pulling him upright, asking, "Are you okay?" with that softness in his voice that made people trust him instantly. He didn't hear the screech of tires. He didn't see the taxi fishtailing across the slush, fighting for control. He didn't feel the danger rushing straight toward him at bone-shattering speed. But Galvin did. And in that instant, fear became something physical, something sharp, crushing, violent inside his chest. The type of fear you only feel when the person you love more than anything in the world is about to be ripped out of your life. Magnus, move. Galvin's voice tore through the winter air, raw enough that several bystanders snapped their heads toward him. But Magnus, startled, froze instead of leaping away. His instinct had always been to help others, even at the cost of himself. And tonight, that instinct almost killed him. Galvin slammed into Magnus at full speed, grabbing a fistful of his coat and yanking him backward with the force of everything in him. Magnus stumbled, eyes wide, just as the taxi skidded past them, missing them by inches. The whoosh of air was violent, the headlights blinding, the horn blasting through the cold like a scream. The taxi smashed into a snowbank down the street, sending white powder exploding upward like a burst of fireworks. Magnus collapsed against Galvin, breath shaking uncontrollably. "Oh God! Oh God!" Galvin held him tight, arms wrapped around him so fiercely he was afraid he might break him. But fear still clawed at him, ruthless and unforgiving. "What were you thinking?" Galvin gasped, voice trembling. "You could have. You almost. Magnus. Do you understand? You almost." Magnus shook his head, tears spilling faster than he could wipe them. "I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. I just wanted to help the man. I didn't think." Galvin cupped his face, forcing Magnus to meet his eyes. "You scared the hell out of me. I thought I was going to watch you die." Magnus let out a choked sob, collapsing into Galvin's chest as if the weight of it all finally hit him at once. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Galvin pulled him in closer. "Don't be sorry. Just don't leave me. Don't ever leave me like that again." People gathered around them, murmuring anxiously. Someone checked on the taxi driver. Someone asked if they were okay. Another person offered Magnus a scarf, thinking he might be in shock. But Magnus only clung tighter to Galvin, fingers fisting into the back of his jacket as though anchoring himself to the only thing keeping him from collapsing completely. Galvin whispered into his hair, "You're okay. I've got you. You're safe. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Magnus' voice broke. "I thought I was doing something good, and instead I almost ruined everything." Galvin tightened his hold. "Saving someone isn't the problem. Forgetting your own worth is." Magnus went still, the words sinking in like a slow, painful truth. Galvin leaned back just enough to look at him fully. Magnus' face was pale, lips tremoring, eyes red from both cold and fear. Snowflakes clung to his lashes like tiny crystals, melting as they touched the warmth of his cheeks. "We can't keep doing this," Galvin said softly. "You can't keep risking yourself because you think you don't matter. Because you do. More than you'll ever understand." Magnus swallowed, voice barely a whisper. "I'm trying. I don't know how to love myself the way you love me. Then let me show you. Every day. Every hour. For as long as it takes." Magnus blinked up at him, and the look in his eyes, something fragile, something hopeful, something desperate, made Galvin's chest tighten. The man Magnus had saved walked up, still shaken. "Hey, thank you. You really saved me back there." Magnus nodded weakly, but Galvin answered for him. "He's a good person, sometimes too good for his own safety." The man looked at Magnus, then at Galvin, then stepped closer. "You two take care of each other. Not everyone gets a second chance like that." His words sank deep. Magnus squeezed Galvin's hand, almost subconsciously. When the crowd dispersed and the noise faded, Galvin brushed a thumb over Magnus' cheek again. "Let's go home, please." Magnus hesitated. "Galvin, I can't just pretend this didn't happen. We won't. But we don't have to fall apart over it either. We can learn from it. Together." Magnus stared at him for a long moment. Then finally he nodded. Galvin wrapped an arm around him, guiding him gently out of the park and down the snow-covered sidewalk. Magnus leaned into him, still trembling, still shaken, but grounded by Galvin's presence. Halfway down the block, Magnus spoke again in a quiet, raw voice. "You could have died too, jumping like that, pushing me." Galvin exhaled softly. "I would do it again, every time, without hesitation." Magnus stopped walking. "Don't say that. Don't say it like your life is worth less than mine. Galvin turned, touched his cheek. It's not. That's why I choose to live it with you. Magnus' breath hitched, eyes flooding again. I thought I didn't matter. I thought losing me wouldn't change anything. Galvin stepped closer, voice low and steady. It would destroy me. You're not optional in my life, Magnus. You're essential. You're home. Magnus looked at him the way someone watches a sunrise after thinking they might not live to see morning. They reached their apartment building, the entryway glowing softly with warm Christmas lights. Galvin keyed them in, his hand never leaving Magnus. As soon as the door shut behind them, Magnus pressed his forehead to Galvin's chest, shoulders shaking again. I'm sorry I scared you. I'm sorry I almost ruined our Christmas. I'm sorry I keep making everything harder than it should be. Galvin lifted his chin gently. Stop apologizing for being human. You're allowed to be scared. You're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to need me. Magnus whispered, I don't want to be a burden. You're not. You're someone I love. And love isn't a burden. Love is a choice. And I choose you. On your best days. On your worst days. Even on the days you can't see what I see. Magnus' voice broke completely. What do you see? Galvin smiled softly through the ache in his chest. I see someone brave enough to keep living, even when his mind lies to him. I see someone who cares so deeply he forgets to protect himself. I see someone who deserves every good thing in the world, including love, especially love. Magnus closed his eyes, letting the words wash over him like warmth after too long in the cold. Galvin kissed the top of his head. You didn't ruin Christmas. You reminded me why I'm fighting for us. Why I always will. Magnus' voice was almost silent. Thank you for not giving up on me. Galvin tilted his chin up and kissed him slowly, carefully, reverently, as if proving with every breath that he wasn't going anywhere. When they broke apart, Magnus whispered, Take me home. All the way home. You already are. The apartment was dim when they stepped inside, lit only by the soft glow of the small Christmas tree they'd decorated a week ago. The ornaments shimmered faintly, reflecting the faint light like memories frozen in glass. Magnus stood just past the doorway, breathing slowly, as if he needed time to let the warmth settle into his bones after being so close to danger. Galvin closed the door gently behind them. The click echoed in the quiet room like the sound of something finally locking into place. Safety, stability, a moment to breathe. Magnus didn't move at first. He just stood there, still clinging to Galvin's coat sleeve like he was afraid the world might collapse again if he let go. Galvin stepped up behind him, slid his hands along Magnus' arms, and rested his chin on Magnus' shoulder. I've got you, he murmured. You're home. We're okay. That was all it took. Magnus exhaled shakily and turned around, burying himself in Galvin's arms. This embrace wasn't desperate like the one at the park. It was grounding, slow, the kind that told both of them they'd survived something that could have ended everything. Galvin brushed a hand through Magnus' soft blonde hair, still dusted with melting snow. Sit with me, he said softly. Let's just breathe for a minute. Magnus nodded, letting Galvin lead him to the couch. They sat close, knees touching, Magnus leaning into him like someone exhausted from holding himself together for too long. Galvin didn't rush him. He knew Magnus needed time to untangle the knots in his chest, so he simply held him, tracing slow circles on his back. Magnus finally spoke, voice small. Do you ever wonder what your life would look like if you hadn't met me? Galvin blinked, surprised by the question. No, not once. Magnus let out a quiet, humorless laugh. I think about it a lot, about how different your life could be, how much lighter, how much easier. Galvin shook his head. Lighter doesn't mean better. Easier doesn't mean happier. I don't need a perfect life. I need a real one, and you're a part of that. You're the person I want beside me, even when it's hard. Magnus stared at him, eyes searching, as if trying to find the truth behind Galvin's words even though they were already laid bare. "I don't want to hurt you," Magnus whispered. "I don't want my fears and my mistakes to become your burdens." Galvin took his hand gently. "Then let me choose that burden. Let me choose you, because I do. Every day." Magnus bowed his head. "It's just, when that taxi came toward me, I didn't think about myself. I thought, maybe it wouldn't matter." Galvin froze, a chill running up his spine that had nothing to do with winter. Magnus continued, voice cracking. "There are moments when I feel so small, so replaceable, that the world wouldn't notice if I disappeared. And I hate that. I hate that part of me, but it's loud sometimes. Too loud." Galvin pulled him into a tight embrace, fierce and protective and full of trembling emotion. "It matters. You matter. You matter so damn much, Magnus. Not because you're perfect. Not because you're strong. But because you're you." Magnus' breath wavered. "I don't know how to quiet that voice. The one that keeps telling me I'm not worth staying for." Galvin pulled back enough to look him directly in the eyes. "Then let my voice be louder. Let my love drown out the lies. Let me fight that battle with you. Not for you. With you." Magnus blinked tears away. "You really believe I deserve that? I know you do, because I see you. All of you. The good, the scared, the stubborn, the kind. The person who'd run into the street for a stranger without thinking. The person who holds so much love inside him he doesn't know where to put it." Magnus let out a weak laugh. "You make me sound better than I am." Galvin smiled gently. "You're better than you think. You always have been." They stayed like that for a long moment, the soft hum of the city outside blending with the steady rhythm of their breaths. The apartment felt warmer than usual, as if relief itself had seeped into the walls. Eventually, Magnus leaned back slightly, wiping his eyes. "I want to try, really try, not just for you, but for myself. I'm tired of being afraid of losing everything. I'm tired of feeling like I don't deserve to stay." Galvin stroked a thumb across his cheek. "Then let's rewrite that fear. One piece at a time." Magnus nodded slowly. Okay. Then tell me, what's the first step?" Galvin took a deep breath, considering. "The first step is this. Don't shut me out. Not when you're scared. Not when you're hurting. Let me in. Talk to me. Even if the words come out messy." Magnus swallowed hard. "I can do that. I want to do that." "The second step," Galvin continued, "is that we promise to face the hard things together. No running. No disappearing. No thinking the other person is better off alone." Magnus leaned into him, resting his head on Galvin's shoulder. "I can do that too." Galvin kissed the side of his head. "Good. Because I'm not losing you. Not to fear. Not to silence. Not to anything." Magnus closed his eyes, letting the comfort settle deeper. After a moment, Magnus whispered, "You know, my whole life, I thought love was fragile, like it would fall apart the moment I made a mistake. But with you, feels like it holds me together, even when I feel like I'm breaking." Galvin felt something ache sweetly in his chest. "That's the point of loving someone. Not to make you perfect, but to remind you you're worth loving even when you're not." Magnus lifted his head, eyes trembling with emotion. "You saved me today. Again." Galvin shook his head gently. "We saved each other. You pulled that man back. Pulled you back. That's what we do." Magnus smiled through the tears. A small, fragile thing, but so full of sincerity it made. "Thank you for choosing me, even on a Christmas Eve like this, when everything almost went wrong." Galvin leaned in, brushing their foreheads together. "Nothing went wrong, because in the end, I still have you." Magnus breathed out softly. "And I still have you," Galvin whispered. "We almost lost each other tonight, but almost doesn't matter, because we're here, together, and that's enough." Magnus closed the distance between them and kissed him with a tenderness that felt like a promise, a soft, slow, trembling promise of doing better, of staying, of fighting for what they had. Snow continued falling outside, blanketing the city in white. But inside their small apartment, wrapped in the glow of the tree and the warmth of each other, they were beginning something new. Something fragile, something brave, something worth saving. Together,